Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I don't even know why I write speeches sometimes because our share saw me. I came to Chicago a couple of weeks ago and I went to an event for an organization that works with people with special needs, and I just ripped up my paper and I just spoke from my heart because I was so moved. And I said to myself, that's probably never going to happen to me again because I'm not really that kind of an emotional person, but here I am here at UMMA and I am just moved. So I'm just going to speak from the heart. I've been pretty overwhelmed, and I'm sure many of you have been overwhelmed with recent attacks in Paris and in Beirut and in Baghdad. And, you know, I'm a person that is on social media, unfortunately, Brother Ubaidullah. And I'm watching, I'm online and I'm trying to, be the person, who wants to condemn violence because I'm a human being. I don't condemn violence or attacks because I'm Muslim. My race, my ethnicity has nothing to do with my condemnations of violence. And I'm trying to be a normal person like everyone else in the world. I'm trying to be hurt. I'm trying to show love and compassion. But what I'm seeing is the vilification of my faith over and over again. And let's remember, sisters and brothers, who is on social media? Our children. Watching their faith slandered. People defining what our faith is. And when I come to spaces like the UMMA Center, it reminds me of what I do every single day. And I wake up every morning and I intentionally every single day choose hope. And people ask me often, they say, what do you fear most? Like, what are you afraid of? People think, they say we're fearless, I consider myself pretty fearless, but I'm also a human being and I am afraid. And people say, what are you afraid of most? And as a Muslim, I fear God first and foremost. But the second thing on my list that I fear is hopelessness. I fear a world where we become hopeless. And a world without hope is a world where all your dreams are shattered, where you walk on this earth not knowing where you're going and not knowing where you came from. So thank you, Ummah, at a time where I needed hope and I needed to be in a place of community, and that I get to share this special evening to honor you and the work that you do. I always tell people who want to teach about Islam, people will say, oh, how do we tell these people what Islam is? And we talk about da'wah. For people who don't know, da'wah is, kind of educating people about Islam. And I always tell people, nobody really cares how many times a day you pray. Nobody wants to know all the details that you have. I always tell people we need to show people what Islam is. And that's what I consider the work that I do, and I consider the work of Ummah. It's about demonstrating Islam, showing people what Islam is. And it reminded me of a few stories that I wanted to share with you, and my work is a lot of storytelling, and I've been very fortunate to have many experiences and meet many wonderful people. So if people remember, in New York City in 2010, we had a big controversy, a mosque controversy, that the Islamophobes dubbed the Ground Zero Mosque. Do people remember that? What people didn't know is that actually there were many, quote, Ground Zero Mosque controversies happening all at the same time, including in a place in New York City called Midland Beach, Staten Island. There was a mosque controversy in Brighton Beach, in Temecula, California, and Old Bridge, New Jersey. I mean, it was happening everywhere. So about 2 years later, 2012, we had a very unfortunate natural disaster called Hurricane Sandy. Dozens of people were killed, homes destroyed. I mean, it was something out of the movies. So about a day later after Hurricane Sandy, a whole bunch of Muslims went out to Midland Beach, Staten Island. We parked our cars right in the middle of an intersection and we ordered pizza, hot pizza. Midland Beach, Staten Island was so heavily hit by the storm. People were still sucking water out of their basements. Their furniture was out on the sidewalks. Everything that they've ever lived for was literally destroyed. So we went to Midland Beach and we ordered 60 pies of pizza. And what we did was we went and knocked on your door, right? And we just were like, knock, knock. You had no electricity, no gas. So we knew that you would probably appreciate a nice hot pizza while you were kind of getting your things together. So before we did that, I'll take you back a little bit to the 2010 and why I brought up the Ground Zero Mosque in Midland Beach, Staten Island. So a Muslim organization wanted to buy an old Catholic church. And the pastor, it was an old church. The congregation got smaller, and the board of the church wanted to sell the church. The Muslims were all over it. They had just all moved to Staten Island, and there was a whole deal. Contract was done, and all of a sudden, the pastor started getting death threats. So he called up his Muslim sisters and brothers, and he said, "Look, I love you guys. You're my sisters and brothers, but this is getting really dangerous. My family and I are getting death threats." So of course the Muslims were like, "Oh no, I mean, the last thing we need is something to happen to you. It's fine." So the deal broke. There were protests in front of this property, people telling us go back to our country. They were like, "No Mass," which is the organization that was buying it, "No Mass, no Hamas." Like, it was really terrible. And our kids were watching this. They would bring their kids. It was really horrible. So anyway, taking you back to 2012 and the pizza deliveries. So we're knocking on doors. I knock on this one door, and my partner, so we had two people go out in teams. My partner was a black sister, and she was waiting by the door, and I knock, and then a woman opened the door. She opened it just a little crack. She's like, "What do you want?" I said, "We're just in the neighborhood. We wanted to know if you would like some hot dinner. We have pizza." She was like, "Excuse me?" And then she opened the door a little bit more, and she looked at me. And for a second, she was silent, and I was like, "This is really weird. Like, you either want the pizza lady or you don't want the pizza." And she started saying to me, she was like, "I'm sorry. I didn't know." And I was like, "What is this lady talking about? I just asked you if you wanted to buy a pizza." She continued to apologize, and then eventually she opens the door and she comes out. And she said, "I didn't know. I just knew what they told me." And I still didn't understand. And then she finally told me that she was one of the people who was orchestrating in Staten Island these protests against the mosque, right? And I said to her, "You have nothing to apologize for. I'm sorry about what happened, and I hope that you have a wonderful evening." And I walked away. And my colleague was like, "Wow. Sisters and brothers, all I did was walk up to this lady's house in a hijab with a pie of pizza in a time of need. That's all I did. Nothing special. I didn't talk to her about Islam. I didn't tell her what I believed. I didn't tell her what the name of my God was." And it was a very moving experience. And she was very moved to open the door to find a woman who looks like me in a very devastating time. This, sisters and brothers, is how you show and demonstrate what Islam is. Being there for people regardless of their race, ethnicity, and religion in their time of need. I always hear people say, Islam is a religion of peace. It's hard for us, sisters and brothers, to keep telling people that Islam is a religion of peace. But what I always tell people, what's more important to me about Islam being a religion of peace is that it's a religion of justice. And if we don't talk about and don't show that Islam is a religion of justice, it's hard for us to talk about Islam being a religion of peace. As Muslim sisters and brothers, justice is not just us. And when we talk about justice, it can't be just about Muslims and Muslim countries and what's happening to our family members or to our mosques or to our communities. And when I think about Brother Ashfaq, I see a lot of me in him. A young man who can walk into a community that's not his and look around and say, something's not right here. I'm part of this. This is my community right here, but it doesn't feel right. I have a responsibility. I look around, and when I see something that is not right, our inclinations as Muslims is to be there to fix it, and that's what Ashfaq did. And I had a similar radicalizing moment myself. It was last summer. And for many people that know me, I've been doing this work for 15 years, focusing predominantly on Arab Americans and Muslims, running my own organization in New York City where we help refugees, asylees, and immigrants. And I've been working with many people who have come on unfortunate circumstances, many of whom I consider to be, quote, my people, my community. And I've worked across ethnic, racial, religious lines with Black communities, Latino communities for many years. But something last summer just radicalized me, just changed my perspective on life. And that was when I was sitting in Brooklyn and heard about the shooting of a young Black boy in Ferguson, Missouri, Mike Brown. And people will say, Mike Brown wasn't the first Black kid to get, unarmed Black kid to get shot by the police. Like, why him? I mean, you live in New York City, for God's sakes. And what I was moved about with Mike Brown, number one, he was very close to age of my son. What was moving about his experience was that here we are living in the United States of America. Here's a boy who gets shot unarmed in the streets of his community. He lays out in an August hot sun for 4.5 hours, baking in his blood. No one checks for his vital signs. No one wants to see if the young man is breathing. No grandma, no mom comes to touch him, to feel him in his last hours on this earth. And then even after all of that, 4.5 hours later, sisters and brothers, an SUV pulls up. We pick up this poor child off the floor. We throw him in the back of an SUV like he's a bag of rocks, like he's roadkill on the side of a road. I was moved by that experience. I was like, this doesn't happen in the United States of America. This is not going to happen in my country, the greatest nation on earth, the largest democracy in the world, one of the wealthiest nations in the world, that we couldn't even bring an ambulance to come and take care of a young boy shot down on our streets. So I went to Ferguson. I was a young Palestinian girl in the hijab walking into a predominantly black community. There wasn't a lot of people that looked like me there. And what moved me in having these conversations with young people in Ferguson, I said, what are you doing here? They weren't asking me because they were being defensive or they were, antagonizing me. They really wanted to know who I was and why I was there. I said, my faith brought me here. I said, love brought me here. I said, I'm a parent. I'm a human being, and I was moved, and I wanted to bear witness and come back and talk about the stories and what happened here so I can tell people what happened. I wanted to be able to say I went to Ferguson and saw what happened. And these people that were in Ferguson were regular people. These are not seasoned organizers and activists and people running organizations. They were young people in the streets that saw one of their own dead on the sidewalk. And what that did for me, sisters and brothers, it reminded me about our faith and my faith and your faith and many people's faiths and all faiths, but in particular in Islam. People started saying on social media, Black Lives Matter, right? Sisters and brothers, Islam was saying Black Lives Matter when we were founded 1,400 years ago. Our religion has always been a religion of racial justice, economic justice, women's rights, human rights. And our issue and our conundrum as a Muslim community is how do we live out our faith in public? And being in Ferguson, coming back to New York City, organizing in communities as a Muslim, and saying this is what Islam is. I don't even have to say what Islam is. People know that I'm Muslim and that I'm doing this work because I believe in it, because I believe that's what our faith teaches us to do. And that wasn't enough to go to Ferguson. So I went on a march from New York City to Washington, D.C., 250 miles, 5 states for 9 days. And as part of this journey, we had to sleep at night. So there's about 100 of us. About 7 or 8 of us were Muslim, and then the rest of us were non-Muslim sisters and brothers, many of whom were people of color, young black people particularly. And for those 9 days, we had to sleep every night. And one of the things I wanted to contribute as a Muslim was I wanted them to experience the hospitality and the true meaning of Islam by inviting them into our houses of worship. So in Philadelphia, I will forever be grateful to the people of the Al Hidayah Center. It's a mass center in Philadelphia, who opened one of the most beautiful mosques in America to our marchers. They cooked for us. They served us. They gave us places to sleep. They had showers. And as a matter of fact, in many of the places we slept at night, we didn't have showers, but we did have showers at the Al Hidayah Center. And these young people that I was with, for some have never been in a mosque before, ever in their lives. That was the first time. And their first time in a masjid was to be fed by Muslims, housed by Muslims, Muslims calling them sisters and brothers. And I will tell you, sisters and brothers, that these 100 people that slept with me at Al Hidayah Center, the funny thing about the Al Hidayah Center was that they actually left us at the masjid at night and just left and went home. And the people came to me and they said, where are the people at the mosque? Where did they go? I said, they said they went home to sleep with their families. They're like, wait a minute. So they just left 100 strangers in this beautiful masjid with beautiful computer labs. They had, the masjid is state of the art. And I said, because you are their sisters and brothers, they trust you, they love you, and they know why you are doing this, and they know why you are marching, and they stand with you. This is your house. I'll tell you this, sisters and brothers, those people will never, ever allow someone to vilify or dehumanize our faith based on their experiences that they had in Philadelphia at the Al-Hidayah Center. When I was thinking about Al-UMMA Center today, I was reminded of a word that I heard people use here today, dignity. Oftentimes in the Muslim community, we talk a lot about charity, about helping people who are less fortunate than us. And it reminded me of a story that happened to me when I went to Palestine. So I went to Palestine 2 summers ago, and I'm walking in Ramallah, which is like a town square. Here I am, I'm an American, you know, a little chip on my shoulder, right? I'm walking in the town square, and this little Palestinian boy wearing a red shirt, too tight for him, you know, doesn't look really well kept. He was selling like gum, like they call it in Palestine taxi gum. It's like Wrigley spearmint gums, right? So you know me here, I'm an American, I flip the kid 5 shekels, right, and I walk away. And this kid comes after me, stops me in the middle of the town square in front of everyone, and he gives me the lecture that I will never forget in my life. He says to me, "Sister, I'm not a beggar. I'm a salesman. You take your 5 gums, or you take back your 5 shekels." I was shocked. I was stunned. I took the 5 gums and I walked away. I didn't even know what to say to the young boy. And what that moment taught me, sisters and brothers, is about the dignity in the action, the dignity in the giving. That I needed that young boy more than that boy needed me. And I think about the services that are being provided by the Ummah Center. And I say to people like Diana and people like Janelle and people like Nevada that actually the staff and the donors that are here tonight, they need you more than you need them. And I say that because as a person who works with people every single day, I hear stories of refugees who come here, who become homeless, who are re-traumatized over and over again. I have watched women with children, single mothers, evicted into the streets of New York City. I have watched fathers in prison, detained and deported, leaving wives with children to take care of them as single mothers. I have seen children bullied, beat in schools, children who say they don't want to be Muslim anymore. I have heard these very heart-wrenching stories, and I am grateful for these people because them coming to you and to Ummah for service, coming to our community for service, they are bringing you closer to God. So I thank those who come to Ummah for service and trusting our community and our values to provide high-quality services to you. I met Janelle today, and I kidnapped her and made her come sit on my table. And I appreciate her vibrant appearance and I feel like I've known her for like 30 years, you know, that kind of spirit. And this is the kind of people that we're attracting at Ummah. And when I listened to Diana up here, she really moved me. And this idea that we can look and see the potential in people and see ourselves in people. And the work of Ummah is about seeing every single individual and what their potential is, and being able to say that those people can have what I have, that everything is easily accessible. To some people, and for other people, it is not easily accessible. And I was talking to Janelle about this. Oftentimes, I hear this when we're having these very hard conversations with the community, and I challenge these conversations all the time. And I'm gonna kind of keep it real for folks that know me really well. I don't really mince a lot of words. And I always hear people say things like, that's on them. Nobody told them to live in those communities. Look at me, I went to college. Anybody can go to college. I got a job, I'm a doctor now. Anybody can be a doctor. Look at my kids, 3 engineers, 2 lawyers, and a doctor. This could happen. Well, people have to understand that the reason why we need organizations like UMMA is because there are injustices happening in this country. Don't let anybody tell you that you have it better because you're in the United States of America. Don't ever settle for someone telling you you have it better than Pakistan or you should be settling because you live here. We have an obligation in this country. And I always tell people this because I get attacked, for many people that know me very well. I get attacked very often. And the first thing that people say to me is, go back to Saudi Arabia. This is not your country. Go back to where you belong. And I tell people all the time, first of all, I'm not from Saudi Arabia. Free Palestine, and I might think about going back to Palestine, but I don't say that either. I say to people, Brooklyn, it's where I'm born and raised, and I'm an American. And people say, you are un-American. You are unpatriotic. And I say to people, the real Americans, the real patriots are the people who fight every single day to make our country a better country and make sure that every single American in this country, every single resident of our country has equality, justice, and we all have the same path to wherever we need to go. And right now, sisters and brothers, the fact of the matter is that we are listening to people who think that they're going to be the next president of the United States of America, telling us that we can't be the president of the United States of America, saying that we should be deporting 11 million undocumented immigrants, many of whom would never have came to this country if it wasn't because they couldn't make it or they weren't fleeing persecution and violence in other countries. We have people who are telling us as women what we should be doing with our bodies. We have people who have no respect for who we are and what we've contributed to this country. And we have people who do not understand the history of Islam in America. One thing I want to leave with you, sisters and brothers, is at a time when we are seeing all this turmoil around the world, and I say this with true sincerity, and particularly to people in this room who have children, who have teenagers, and for the young people in this room, is that we, no matter what, I don't care what the circumstances are, we are to stay unapologetically Muslim in this country. We have every right to be here. We have helped build this nation, and our religion has been on these shores in this land since the founding of this country, when our country brought over at least 30% of slaves were Muslims. So our lineage in this country as Muslims is deep. This is our country, and I want our Muslim sisters and brothers to start acting like we belong here. Oftentimes, I feel like when I hear in these very tense moments around the world, I start seeing people questioning, right, our role as Muslims, and I start having to debate people in our community about these condemnations, condemning things as Muslims. And I think what we need to do is we need to continue to understand that this is our country. And while we love Pakistan, we love India, I love Palestine, and we need to support our sisters and brothers across the world, but it says a lot about our community when we are neglecting those that live in our own backyards right here in Chicagoland area, in New York City, wherever you are. If we are only looking outwards and outside this country, it is why people can project on us that we are foreigners, that this is not our country. But sisters and brothers, this is our country. And I love the sisters and brothers in my community who live next door to me, down the street, a mile down, just like I love my people in Palestine. So as you invest in your home country or the country of your parents, let's invest that same capital here. Let's build community here and let people understand what Islam truly is about, and Islam is about service. Ummah, first of all, the name, Ummah. Just to say that I was here to support, it's like saying I was here to support the Ummah. And to watch women who are running this organization, like sisters like Arshia, who have taken their own life circumstances, could walk away from the community and never look back and say, no, this is my community. And I'm gonna take my trials and tribulations and I'm gonna serve. And I'm gonna serve not only my community, but I'm gonna serve anyone who wants to come through these doors. Sisters and brothers, I don't have a lot of money, but I have a lot of heart, I have a lot of compassion, I have a lot of love. I also have 3 children myself. I have a 17-year-old son, a 15-year-old daughter, an 11-year-old daughter. Not everybody can be me and not everybody can be Arshia, but every single person in this room has a responsibility. You can give an hour of your time, a week, a month. Sometimes people think it's not enough. Should I even try? Ummah needs you. Young activists and organizers need you. We can't do this on our own. Sometimes we don't think about the people doing the service. We see people like Sister Arshia and we say, look at that sister, mashallah, she's so fearless. People see me and they say, that mashallah, I wish I had that energy that Linda has. And I say to people, only if you were in my heart, only if you were with me on a daily basis, when I sit and think to myself, have I even done enough? Are my children proud of me? Are they really, really understanding what I'm doing? Is my community proud of me? Does my community understand the sacrifices that people like us make for our community? And I always ask myself on the day of judgment when Allah asks me, what did you do with all the blessings that I gave you? What kind of answer am I going to have? And I want you to leave here, sisters and brothers, because I know the people at Ummah have a great answer. Their answers are going to be real good. Allah is going to be very pleased with their answers. But I want to ask everyone in this room to think about that. On that day when Allah says, mashallah, I gave you many blessings. I gave you healthy children. I gave you beautiful, beautiful homes. I gave you material things. I gave you health. What did you give back? What did you give back to the people around you that are the least fortunate? I always think about that, sisters and brothers. I want to have a good answer. And that answer has to come with action. So I want you to think about that. And I think in this area, a great answer would be that I was a supporter of Ummah. I was there when Ummah needed me. I was there to support Ummah because they support people regardless of race, ethnicity, religion. They are the best teachers of Islam. They are representing our community with the highest integrity and dignity. And when I think about every person that has ever been helped by Ummah and think of those donors, for every person that now has a job, for every person that was able to purchase a car, and for every mile that they drive that you helped them get to where they needed to get. For every person who has now a better life, and that person is making a prayer for you in whatever way they pray. And they say, I pray for whoever helped me get to where I am now. And when they pray for Ummah, they pray for you, sisters and brothers. Think about that sometimes. Who prays for you? Who's appreciating your presence on this earth? Who have you helped? Who have you supported? Who at night when they're doing their Isha prayer is making dua for you? I think about that. I think, who makes dua for me? And I think about my clients. And I'll tell you this much about the people who you think are the most, like the least fortunate. They are actually the most fortunate. Every client that I have ever helped, particularly the Muslim ones, you know what they say after they had just told me a story about violence or coming from Syria? They'll tell me stories about their husbands were killed. They saw their brother-in-laws chopped up. They saw their houses blown up. And you know what they'll say after all of that? Alhamdulillah. They still find a place to thank Allah. Even after all the trauma, after all the chaos, after all the destruction, they still can help. They can still thank the Almighty Lord for the very little that they have. Ummah, I'm going to make dua for you and pray for you, and I am going to be a national supporter of Ummah. And if there's a way that I can help make sure that in every corner of this country people know about the work of Ummah, that's going to be my role and my responsibility. I ask you today to make dua for the people of Ummah, for the clients of Ummah, for the people who are seeing the most hardest of times. And what I will tell you, sisters and brothers, is what I've also seen is the people who have seen the best of times have come to a day where they have seen the worst of times. So just because some of us may be blessed, only Allah knows what can happen to us in a year or 2 or 3 or 4. Let's pay it forward. Let's support the people that need it now so that when it comes, inshallah, it never comes, but if there does come a time where we need that support, that there are people out there to support us. Thank you, Ummah. May Allah bless you and protect you. May God protect your clients and all the people that you serve. And may Allah protect every single person and bless every single person who chose to come out here tonight to support Ummah. I hope that people understand how personally moved I am and how, as you probably noticed, every single word that I shared with you tonight was from the deepest of my heart. And I am moved by your work. I'm moved by the soul and the compassion and the dignity and the faith in your work. And inshallah that I am rejuvenated and re-inspired to go back and continue to do this work in New York City. Thank you so much, Ummah. Assalamu alaikum.